Welcome to Fearless Females, where ambition meets resilience. Meet your guide, Lori Jones, president of Fidelis Wealth Advisors. Join her and remarkable women executives as they uncover the triumphs and transformative moments shaping extraordinary careers. Ready to be fearless? Let the journey begin.
Good morning, listeners. Thank you for tuning in again to Fearless Females. I'd like to give a shout out to Fidelis Wealth Advisors. I appreciate their sponsorship of these podcasts. And today we're talking with Michele. I am really excited for you to hear this podcast because she is doing amazing things at helping empower women in the boardroom, giving them an idea of what they can add. And she has a really incredible story just on her own of different things that she's gone through and ways that she's overcome. And she's producing these amazing women in boardroom settings where they can make real change at the same time that she's raising kids and getting college degrees. I didn't ask, but I assume she's probably not doing a whole lot of sleeping along this time. So I'm really excited for us to get to hear her story. So thank you so much for joining us this morning. We're here with Michele Ashby. She's the CEO of ACE LLC. And I'm excited to talk with Michele today. I think it's going to be really interesting to see what she does. And I'm excited for you all to hear that. Thank you, Michele, for joining us and doing this.
Thank you, Lori, for having me. It's my pleasure.
So the first question I always ask is my favorite, actually, and that is, what is your favorite book? I love reading. I want to hear about it.
Okay, boy, my favorite book is from my childhood called A Patch of Blue. And they made it into a movie with Sidney Poitier, and it actually won an Oscar. He didn't, but another person did. And it was back in the 60s, and it talked about a young girl who was blind, who makes a friend, doesn't know that the friend is Black, and her guardians are very racist. And it's about that journey. And it's, I think, set the tone for me in regards to an openness to diversity and a love of Black people and other cultures.
Yeah, I think that's interesting how, sometimes if you can't see, like, you don't have some of those
biases, right? Well, and it's like just what we're going to talk about with boards. If we had resumes that were blind resumes without names on them, I think that we'd have a lot more women already on boards. So it has happened in other cases. You know, the Philharmonic, I think in Philadelphia, actually went to blind auditions because they were having a really hard time finding qualified players and musicians, and they ended up with a lot more women. When they didn't see the person behind the screen and just listen to their music, they actually picked for quality, not based on what they saw. So it can be something quite, yeah.
So that kind of delves right into what you do and why you do it. Tell me a little bit about your journey. Talk about how you got where you are today and kind of what you do.
Okay. Well, I think the best place to start is when I entered two worlds that were male dominated in finance and mining. And people are like, really? Mining? Yes. I started as a stockbroker and decided to get specialized in gold mining shares because they gave me, as a rookie, they gave me all these accounts of people that had been burned in their stocks and they were all gold bugs. And so I got to learn from them why they invested in gold stocks and a little bit more about the companies. Fell in love with both sides. I fell in love with the people in the mining sector I was talking to, as well as the gold bugs who were teaching me about this different way, this contradictory way of looking at investments and economies and global politics, et cetera, et cetera. And I was hooked. And so that's how I ended up there. So I spent 3 decades in those two spaces, almost always the only woman in the room. And something that I really enjoyed, I was invited to my first board in 2005, a mining company board on the New York Stock Exchange. And it was because of the relationship. It was because, they knew me, I knew them. They appreciated my skills and background and my network, and they brought me in because of that value. And subsequently, I've joined a number of other boards while working full time, because you can do both. And over the past 20 years, now I've served on 8 corporate boards. I'm currently on 2 mining boards, very active, both traded in on the Toronto Stock Exchange in Canada. So that's a short version of how I got here. There's lots of stories before, during, and after all that too.
So did you finish university? Did you go to college? What did you study? Did you study being on boards and mining? I bet that isn't what you studied. No,
that's a question I don't often get. I went to an all-girls private school, and to give you an example of with a caliber, Condoleezza Rice was a year ahead of me. I was at the low end of the totem pole in this particular school based on talent of all kinds. Like, we had Olympians, we had, people that went to the Royal Ballet, Condoleezza Rice, et cetera, et cetera. The expectation was that we would join, not get married and have babies out of high school, that we would go to college and have careers. And the majority, like 98% of my classmates did that. I had a class of like 70 girls. And guess who's the one that got married and had babies? Me. So I went to nursing school, didn't work, so I quit. And I did go get married, had kids, had a marriage for a number of years. And it turned out to be, quite frankly, not great. Okay, it turned out to be an abusive marriage. And I was able to get out of the marriage and keep my children. I was a single mom for 14 years. And that's when I entered the world of being a stockbroker. So I'm in my private world, I was a single mom struggling to pay the bills. And in my career, I was starting at the very bottom of the ladder as a rookie stockbroker, trying to claw my way up and learn as fast as possible and, really make a living, and then, turn it into a career. I did go to university in my 40s. So way after I had accomplished everything, I have to say, I had a chip on my shoulder. I'm one of those people that believes that you can do anything. And I was going to prove to people that I didn't need a degree in order to do what I wanted to do. And I looked for a career that didn't require a degree. It was really based on merit and chutzpah and, all of that. And I was very successful. My cousin was an administrative person at a university, and she kept bugging me, go get you get it. You are so smart. You have it. Just challenge the degree. So finally I was like, okay, if you shut up, I'll do that. So I challenged the degree in finance. So I was working full time, raising my kids, doing all these other things, So it took me a while, but I challenged the degree, which means I tested out of all of the courses, and they required 10 courses in order that I had to pay, full price for. I got my degree for under $10,000, by the way, doing this. It's a great thing, because one test in one subject would get me 3 credits, and it cost me $55. So it fit my budget and it fit my timeline. And I came out with a degree in finance. I graduated magna cum laude. I got I got into the society, the private society, Alpha Sigma Nu, and I got the Community Service Award. So I was on stage a lot at graduation, and I thought, wow, I guess education is great, because they don't do this in business. Like, they give you money, but they don't give you awards like this all the time. So I did really well, and then I went and did my master's in spiritual sciences. So complete opposite end there.
Yeah, complete and total. That is so interesting. I have a son that is on that track. Actually, he's like, I don't need a degree, Mom. So you got to give me the words to use to get him to go challenge and get a degree.
Yeah, I think you go do as much as you can without it. And then if you hit a wall, then you add it in. I do believe it's helped me, in many ways, psychologically, but also on my resume to have that there. And I also believe that I can create anything, like this business I'm doing now. We live in a country with so many freedoms. And I think that the most important thing is to exercise that muscle.
Yeah.
So I knew that I would always be somebody who was being studied, never the one that was studying, the other side of it, maybe. I don't know.
Yeah, I love that. I love that. That's such an empowering way of looking at things too. Like, I can do it. I just have to figure out how.
Exactly. And we all have that muscle, by the way, especially women. Like, we forget that we know how to figure things out. Every one of us has had something happen in our life, personally, professionally. Somehow it's either happened to us or we've chosen to reach for something that we wanted and we figured out how to get there. And that's really the secret in that mindset. If you can turn that muscle on when something scary comes up and say, I can figure this out, oof, you're going to go farther and faster doing that.
So tell me a little bit about the best investment that you made in yourself through this journey. Is there something that you can look back on and say, I am so glad I did that. If I didn't, I just wouldn't be where I am today?
I believe in investment, personal investment. Like, from the time I left my marriage, I had really good therapists. And if I didn't have therapists, I wouldn't be where I'm at. I went through depression. I went through a lot of different things. And that investment over a long period of time saved me and also kept me supported and positive. So that's a basic one that I think, our mental health investment is good. A most recent one, in the last year, I spent $30,000. Like, my training is not inexpensive that I do. I'm worth it. And I know that. And I know that I bring that value to people. I also model it, and I am continuing to stretch myself. And so I have a mentor that I found a few years ago through one of my ACE candidates, started in some of his programs at the very bottom on some generic things, went up to VIP masterminds. I'm in a master's program with him right now. And in fact, I'm going to a speaker training that he leads in a couple of weeks. I ended up in an Oxford talk because of that. And I also have ended up going to Tanzania and being with the Hadza tribe because of that. So I've invested in those kinds of programs and individual coaching. And I really believe that I'm investing in it to expand myself and my business. His platform is much, much larger than mine. And I recognize that. I like the quality he has. And I'm kind of betting that I'm going to be able to have access to those and guidance to also be at that level. I want to be the Gloria Steinem of getting women on boards. And the reason is because women and girls have not had this messaging. This is a surprise to so many women. I recognize that just having the basic knowledge and education, this is a possibility for you. This is something that could be available to you somewhere in your future, in your career, if you choose to be in that kind of a leadership role. And so it's kind of like we're at ground zero, and I feel that kind of initial messaging is really missing.
Yeah, I agree with you, Michelle. I think that's a very valid point. Just that, like, they don't even know that it's a possibility. Oh, that it's available. Mm-hmm. Like, I think that's half the battle.
It is, right? Just to be like, poof, oh, I have another opportunity that I can go to. So yes, absolutely. And this is not a secret to boys or men. And that's where I feel that larger platform to give out those basic messages can be really, really helpful for our future generations.
Oh, I agree. So before I talk about, the next question, let me ask a little bit, just a quick question about like what you do as far as like getting women on boards. Like, why did you decide this was that you can feel the passion and you can feel that this is something that you are so behind? Why? What drove you here?
It was because I tease people and say, our average board member is still a 63-year-old white man. And you remember, I had 3 decades and 2 male dominated. So I tease that really inside, I'm a 63-year-old white man. I know how to think like them. I know how to do deals like them. I know how to, cuss like them, tell jokes, all of it. And when our question would go around the table at a board meeting, who do you know? That could be another member. I would think of men's names. And honestly, I didn't hang out with women. I didn't belong to women's organizations. I didn't trust them. What my experience was that it was very competitive and a lot of jealousy among women in my group as I was coming up. And so I had isolated myself. But in 2016, there was a lot of noise. There aren't enough women on boards. And I was like, okay, I'm going to go find out. I'm going to go talk to them by myself. So I asked people, who do you know? Like, introduce me to some female leaders, the women's chamber, CEO and different people. And I did 200 interviews over 18 months. And what I learned was that, number one, there's super qualified women out there. I had a file that I called Super Women, and I kept all my notes in there. I was like, someday I'm going to write a book about all these women, because what they've been through, what they've accomplished, I was like, wow, there are lots of qualified women out there. And they didn't know anything, again, about being on boards or being paid. They were just like, really? You can get paid? Yeah, like you can get paid 6 figures. This is a great part-time gig. So that was the start. And then I got in a program and mentored somebody for a year. And I was like, whoa, at this pace, it will take forever. We can't go this slow. And there was no guidance. And I looked around to see what's out there to train women by themselves, specifically to get on boards. And there were, programs here and there, but nothing really solid. Like I was looking for Harvard and Kellogg cost you 15 grand to go for a weekend. Oh, by the way, in order to apply, you had to be a C-suite executive of a major corporation. Leaves out 99% of us. It defeats what we're trying to do here. And so I just woke up one night and I went, okay, if I'm going to do this, what does it look like? I have to share everything. And I have to get over this piece of me that doesn't trust women, right? Yeah. So I had to do a personal transformation, a couple of them actually. But that one was really key. Like, how am I to stand in front of a room of women and tell them how to get on boards if I don't trust them? They're going to pick that up in like a nanosecond. Mm-hmm. And I had to make a personal agreement with myself to be open, to be vulnerable, to be authentic, and to be willing to have somebody potentially stab me in the back or whatever, because of the reason I'm doing this is way bigger than me, way bigger than any of that kind of stuff. Mm-hmm. And that's the agreement that I've kept with myself, to break open Pandora's box and share all the secret sauce with these women as I'm training them, and to build that into my program. And so I don't do things very lightly. I built a really condensed, vibrant, transformational program that covers the practical stuff, but also how do women build their confidence and competency in that top 10% in the CEO role and in the boardroom. It's a different vernacular. Think about it in terms of, you and I speak American English. Think in terms of British English and the different little bits of terminology. That's what I'm talking about. There's a little bit difference here in that executive vernacular. If you're not prone to knowing what it is, you don't pick up on it. But I break it down and teach people that, so that when you are sharing your board resume, which is different than your professional resume, or even in your elevator pitch and the way you represent yourself, that executive vernacular is what I want you to be doing, so that it goes in the 63-year-old white male brain and it's heard. You're seen, you're heard, they read your resume and they continue to read it. It doesn't go in another pile.
I love that. I love that you're helping. You mentioned something about like building their confidence. I found just from my, podcast experience, I'll talk to women and I'll be like, would you do this? And they're always like, oh, you don't want me. I'm not very exciting. I don't do very exciting things. And they're doing such amazing, wonderful work and doing such great things. And they always are all, oh, I'm not that great. And I think you run into that at a different level where you're at too.
Absolutely. All the time. So that's a really big part of what I do, is push women. Not only, it isn't just about, it's like reflecting back to them, to have someone like myself that says to them, wait a second, this is really important. And here's why. This is where it where it matters. So if I can help people understand the importance of bragging about themselves in this very specific way, the outcomes are amazing. Not just for them personally, but for all of us, because now we've got this fabulous, skilled and experienced woman who's sitting at the table in the boardroom, which is where all the power and the money are. The decisions happen at the top. Okay. We've been allowed into the room up to a certain point, but not at where the biggest decisions are being made. And that's where we can make the largest impact. So just imagine one woman joining a board. She's the first woman on the board. And she asks the accountant, the CFO, can you tell me, or the HR person, I'd like to see what our payroll looks like. What's our compensation? How are we paying? Are we paying our women equal to our men? Are we paying our minorities equal to our men? Are we giving them the same titles if they're doing the same jobs? And if not, why not? So that one conversation can lead to pay equity and a title. And we can move the needle that much by only having that one conversation and one woman in a boardroom. So do you see how important this is?
I do. And I feel that from you too. Thank you for doing that. I mean, it's huge. It's lifting and growing the entire, female population. That's important.
Yeah.
So,
yeah.
What is, Michele, the worst advice that someone gave you? And did you take it? Did you not take it?
Wow. The worst advice that anybody gave me. Well, I don't think it's the worst, but there's some advice that I don't take. Like somebody asked me, I just got my online course together about 1.5 years ago, and I had somebody who was pursuing me and said, listen, I can market this for you and we can get it in front of millions of people and it'll just make tons of money. And, you're going to impact people all over the place, and had this plan of buying huge mailing lists and blah, 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 blah. And I had to really, and I really trust this person. It's somebody I've been around, a mentor of mine for a long time. And I considered it seriously, almost got to the place of pulling the trigger. And then it just didn't feel right. And I was like, nope, not going to do it, And so I didn't. And so we don't have this big marketing launch. We don't have thousands of people taking it at this point. It's grown organically, and people that want to invest in themselves and they believe in what I'm doing and like the quality of how I do it, they're the people who are in there. And that's good. That's good enough for now. So it's not the worst advice. I was going to say my worst advice was my own self when I got married to my first husband. Oops. Did I say that?
Yeah, I know. If you could go back, that's probably actually my next question is about regrets and looking back. But I do know that if you can go back and talk to your younger self, you would definitely say, maybe don't make that decision, right? There's like 3 or 4 in my life I can think about that I would be.
I think at this point in my life, though, I realized the value. I mean, it made me so much stronger. It made me so much more viable, and it made me so resilient. And I think it also makes me an asset to other women who have gone through things, and I used to always look up and go, God, do I have to have every experience, And yet I find that I can relate to so many people and so many situations because of my experiences, whether it's career or personally. I had a daughter who was diagnosed with cancer when she was 18. And unfortunately, she passed away when she was 19. And that's not an experience anybody wants to have. It's introduced me to an entirely different world of people and of wellness and healthcare and all of the things that go along with that I would have avoided, I think, because you don't want to be close to those kinds of things. So I think those things have also made me more compassionate and more sensitive. As a 63-year-old white man inside, I've denied a lot of my feminine side. And I wanted to also say that through this work of being with all these women, they have taught me so much about that, about about my own feminine side and compassionate side and loving. That's been the gift that I get back, which is pretty amazing.
Yeah, I think it's nice that the corporate culture is changing a bit so that we can be a little bit more authentic. Like they're recognizing that having that compassion or empathy isn't a negative, but a positive in a lot of ways.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah. And I think that's why when we look at the statistics of when you have more diversity on the board, you can see in the statistics that there's an increase in return on investment. The employee retention is much higher, and the shareholder stock price goes up. Those are just 3 of those. Culturally, if you break it down, there are even more areas that they look at. You can see that everybody's happier. Your customers like your product better. It goes on. And I really, really believe that it is that addition of having both genders there and that complement. Like, I don't want to see a board that's all women either.
Oh.
I think we complement each other. We bring different things to the table. Men are so good at setting the goal and killing the thing, right? They know how to put those blinders on and go for it. Women are planners and organizers. They take into consideration a much broader look and a broader view. We're looking at what's happening in the community where we're doing our business. Are we taking care of them? Are we hiring people from that community? Are we just flying in our guys and making it happen and that type of thing? And so why wouldn't we do this? It just makes so much sense. And that's why I say I want to live in the world where that's actually going on. And like you said, we've seen more of it happening. We're still working on it. We are breaking the glass ceiling right now. We are the pioneers. So it's not easy and it's not going to be fair. And we still have to keep our foot in the door to keep it open.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree. What about regrets? If you look back, and I know that we all learn from the situations that we wish we could have gotten out of or avoided, but do you have something that if you knew what you know right now and you could go back and redo that situation, you would do it differently?
The thing that comes to mind mostly is my daughter. If there were anything I could have done differently in that situation to save her life, I would do it. I don't know. I have some ideas of some decisions that could have been different in her case. And I think that's really the only thing. Because again, I really believe that all of our experiences, good or bad, are really why we're here. And it matters more about how you pick yourself up and what you do with it after the fact. That matters. And, I just really miss her. And that's the only thing if I had that one wish, it'd be like to bring her back.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, I can't imagine. I know that's unimaginable. So I'm in awe of how you've dealt with the many different situations that you've handled and done it while still growing and keeping such a positive attitude and more importantly, I think like a zest for life. You can feel your passion. So that's an achievement.
Yeah. I'm very lucky. I think when you go through something that intense, it's like, will I ever be happy again? And the answer is yes, you can be happy again if you do the work. And to be in a position where I'm at as an entrepreneur, the best gift that we can get is to find a need that we know we can fill. That's like Christmas every freaking day. And it's like finding the biggest diamond that's ever been mined. I mean, it's so valuable that's where I think all my energy comes from. It's so invigorating to know that this is an important piece and I have something that I can actually contribute to help get it there. It's like candy all day. It's great.
Yeah, that's funny because that's kind of the way I feel about like finance. I love what I do. I love helping women to kind of understand finance, understand where they're going, what their money's doing and why. And it just makes it gets me up in the morning and keeps me going all day long and not in a way that I'm like, but in a way where I'm like, oh my gosh, I get to do it again today.
Yeah.
So I get that. That is a true gift. You're right.
Yeah. And I love what you're doing too. Like that's a passion for me because I was in finance I still kind of manage our own kind of thing, but it's such an intense, complex thing. And to be able to help women navigate that and be confident to, just start with that little bit. I didn't start saving till I was 40. I put $100 a month in an annuity when I was 40. It was all I could afford because I'm raising 2 kids by myself, et cetera. And that has turned into millions. And so it's never too late to start, and it's never too small to get going. And I just really encourage people so much to do that and to get help from people like you to get that guidance, because investment, women tend to keep their money in cash because we're risk averse. Investment is how it grows, and that's how it multiplies. So, on the regret question, I forgot. I do have one answer.
Okay.
I do have one answer. I wish I'd have bought more real estate when I had the money and the market was at the bottom. That is one of my regrets. Yes, I forgot that one.
Yeah, I always say if I could travel back in time, I'd travel back to, Apple early on and go ahead and invest because.
Okay. So I'm a little bit ahead of you on that because I was introduced to Berkshire Hathaway when it was $1,500 a share.
Ooh,
and it's what, 300,000 a share now?
Yeah.
I own it, but I didn't pay $1,500 a share for it.
Yeah, I know. As stock traders, we definitely have we wish we could go back to this particular point.
Yeah, but be my luck, I'd pick, the wrong ones. Anyway, I did. I had a few bombers, that's for sure.
Yeah. What about if you could go back in time and talk to your 20-year-old self, what would you tell her?
Oh my God. Well, that's the age I got married to my first husband. I don't really regret it because I have these 2 wonderful children and now I have grandkids and stuff. And that life wouldn't have been as rich and full. And I don't think I would have been as motivated to be independent if I hadn't been through that situation. 20 years old. Wow. Gosh. I just am thinking about what the world was like then. I think that one thing I would tell myself is to be nicer to my parents. I was a wild child and a rebel, imagine. And I know that I kept them up nights, and don't drink so much alcohol. That's my other advice. You can be fine without as much alcohol, but keep having fun. You can still go out and dance all night and be with your friends. You just don't have to be intoxicated to do it.
I'm going to make my kids all listen to this episode. Like required listening. Be nice to your parents. I love that. Michele, what scared you the most when you started your career? And does it still scare you, or did you learn how to handle it?
I think what scared me the most was I was afraid to fail. Mm-hmm. I was afraid, I started my career and literally within months I left my husband. And I was really scared that I was not going to be good enough. I wasn't going to be worthy. I was not going to make enough money. I mean, there was so little confidence there. Mm-hmm. And I think that was the piece that was, that was that part. The second thing that made me the most scared was when my daughter was diagnosed with cancer. No one else in my family had ever been diagnosed. And I thought, what the F am I going to do? Yeah. I don't know what to do. And I figured it out. I did. I reached out to people, but those moments are super, super scary. When the rug is pulled out under us, it can be a storm that takes your house out. It can be a parent that ends up having to go to the hospital unexpectedly. It can be your child that needs something at school that you have to, all those things affect women way more than men. Like men don't drop everything and go do this stuff. We do it. And so I think we become, again, very resilient and ready. I think we have another like planetary level that we have to live on, because we are responsible for a lot of things that they're not labeled and they're not mentioned, but we got that instinct in us anyway, which is like, I'm going to make it happen. I'm going to be okay. And I think personal illness is probably the most scary. If I can't get up and I can't do what I want to do, that would be another kind of like, oh, I don't know what to do here.
Yeah, that keeps you up at night.
Yeah.
How did you get over that lack of confidence, or that I'm scared I'm going to fail? Was there something that you combated that with? Was that just the therapist, or how did you develop that confidence?
Well, the people that hired me, somehow they saw something in me and they really supported me. So I got myself in a situation where I was in a brokerage firm within a team, and we had training every week. So if I have education, knowledge helps me. And so that's what I do is I study. I start studying. Back then we didn't have the internet. So I'd go to the library and get books, and I'd get newsletters, and I'd, talk to people. I ask questions, and that's where my mentors started, right? These mentors, these people that turned into being helpful. Like I remember I had a client that sent a $10,000 check for a stock purchase, and it bounced. And what happens with that, they call that a hickey in the brokerage, verbiage. And what that means is that I am responsible to pay for that $10,000. The firm sells the stock. If there's a loss, let's say they sold the stock and the loss was $3,000. That came out of my paycheck. And I took these guys to court to get back my $10,000, get that money so that I wouldn't have that hickey. And I had support people who helped me. Like I can remember crying on this guy's shoulder, and he's walking me around the building, like, it's going to be okay. It's going to be okay. You're going to make it. I'm going to help you out. I'll introduce you to somebody, and da, 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 da. And it all did work out. I won the case. I took it to court and won the case, and they had to pay. And I never had to pay a dime. And the attorney did it pro bono for me, which was fabulous. So, I think that was where my confidence started coming, was that, again, the feedback from people who are saying, wait a second, you're pretty good at this. Like I'm going to give you another, level. We're going to make you our specialist in gold mining stock. So we're going to send every inquiry that we have that comes in our firm, that anybody that wants to get into gold mining shares or silver, we're just going to give them to you as a lead. I was like, great. I got all the leads, but I have to be educated. That's my number one thing. I say yes to everything. For the first 2 years. That's my advice to people when they get in a new role. Say yes to everything, do everything. Scrub the floor, stay late, read the books, do whatever it is you need to do. And then after you've accumulated for 2 years, you're going to have a pretty good idea of what you like to do, what you don't, and start heading towards what you like. And then make yourself really, really, really good. My goal was to be one of the top 10 brokers in the country in gold mining shares. So I had a column. I was a published author. I just went full bore into it and made myself stand out. And that's how I built my business.
Oh, I love it. That's great advice too. That's really good advice. I like the idea of figuring out in those first couple of years, like where you're going to stand out, what you love. And in order to do that, sometimes, you say yes to everything and figure out where, after a little while, where you say no and where you put your energy. That's great. Yeah. I'm guessing, Michele, that the answer to this question is yes. But did you face any unique challenges because you were?
Well, because I'm a woman. Yeah. I have to say that I feel like I faced a lot of advantages because I'm a woman. I have a different take on it. I got into the brokerage business because I was a woman. It was during the EEOC, the equal opportunity. They had to have a quota. They were looking for women. I was ticking a box. Okay. Yeah. So it was an advantage. I was the only woman at the first mining conference I went to, 600 guys and me, except for the waitress. Okay. And I got so much attention. I was invited into boardrooms because I'm a woman. I think it's an advantage. It is not a detrimental. Have I had sexist things happen? Yes. Have inappropriate things that have been said? Yes. I've never been accosted, thank God, or sexually attacked, thank God. And I've established respect, I believe, by being in those rooms and allowing, think about the guys, it's a locker room until you get in there. And they're used to their whatever banter. And then a woman comes in that they trust and they like, and they're, I'm one of the guys, and they still are bantering. And then one of them eventually is going to say, wait, okay, guys, let's not do that. There's a girl in here. Let's not do that. And they get better. And, it's a process for both sides.
Oh, yeah.
Right. So, yeah, I do feel like it's been much more of an advantage than a disadvantage for me.
Yeah. I love that. I like what you said earlier a little bit about women being on boards and being able to affect some of those things that maybe are disadvantages, like the pay gap or the, things like that. Like those challenges, unique challenges that women face are things like, maternity leave and things like that. And I think if we have women in those leadership roles that can affect that kind of those inequalities, that's going to be huge for the future. Our daughters and granddaughters will have it better.
Yeah. And our sons. I think, the other thing I like to talk about a little bit is for the men to retain their integrity as men. Mm-hmm. I'm not asking men to be feminine. I'm asking men to be men and women to be women and to complement each other, keep those strengths. And we rely on men for so many things, right? So many of the attributes that they carry, the calmness, the directness. Men were always really direct with me. If they didn't like me, they said it to my face. They were like, Michelle, I don't like you. I don't like what you're doing. Stop it, And then through 5 years later, they'd come back and go, please forgive me. I'm sorry because you made it happen. So I appreciate that directness that I know what the rules are, right? Yeah. And it just makes it so much easier that way. Anyway, we need everybody.
I agree. And there's an organization that I'm a part of where it talks about a lot of times, because men are the C-suite, they are on the, in the boardrooms, having a mentor who can help you get in those places and is really important. And so, I don't think we should be fighting each other. I don't think. No, I think that working together, and I've found too that I'll mention my passion for women in finance, and there's dads and uncles and brothers who are all like, yes, I want my daughter, my niece, my sister, my wife to have these experiences. So they're very, very, they want to be helpful in that space too.
Yeah. It's good. I mean, I've always been the nerd. My dad had what I call a computer brain. Like when I came home from school with a trigonometry question, I go, Dad, how do I, what's the answer to this? And he'd look at it and go, it's like X equals C3. And I'd be like, great. How did you get there? And he would literally take the answer and write the formulation backwards and anyway, I was his little, assistant. He was a treasurer for the Knights of Columbus credit union. And every month we'd have to type in the interest rates on all the cards. And I was his little assistant, and I'd type it and put it in the files and all that kind of stuff. My dad taught me how to do my income taxes. And that was our bonding time together every year, which I know people are like, are you crazy? But we would block a weekend every year. And my dad and I would sit down for the entire weekend and put all the boxes and papers all over the table and go through and do all the taxes together. And we did that for a long time, like decades. And so, when my mom and dad needed help, I took over their finances and I became a broker. I'm a money nerd for sure. So I love what you're doing. I really do.
So, Michelle, tell me, what are you most proud of?
Oof. What am I most proud of? I think I'm just most proud of my family, my son and his wife and their 2 kids and my husband and his family. I'm most proud of the family and my personal life, being able to, I think, have a really full personal life and have a really vivacious and inspiring career. And I'm also proud to be in the stage I am in my life and still reaching. I just see so much more. Like, there was a point, I'm in my 60s. There was a point I thought, it's going to slowing down. And I just launched my fourth stream of revenue. And I see it can be even more coming for me. And I was like, whoa, this is so cool. Think about it. Yet for men, when they're in their 50s, they're just getting into their prime and they're starting to get in their mid 50s, most likely. Some of them are getting those C-suite roles and CEO roles. And in their 60s, they're even valued more and they're making more and they're getting on boards and they are, their value is going through the roof. And we look at it from a standpoint of women. And it, like I just mentioned, we feel like, like it's over. It ain't over. It's only over if we think it's over. And so when we look at things in that realm, it's like, wait a second. Charlie Munger was 99 and 11 and a half months old when he passed, and he was still on the board of Costco. He's still sharp as a tack. He still brought value. He didn't sleep through his board meetings, and everybody listened to the guy. Man, I want to be that Mrs. Charlie Munger person, right? I ain't done yet. I see more coming.
I love that. I love that viewpoint too, because I always said, I talk a lot about retirement as a financial advisor, but the idea of slowing down and relaxing stresses me the heck out.
I'm with you. I think I'd have a heart attack. I don't know that I know how to do that. And frankly, things are getting so much more expensive. I took care of my parents and, when you're talking 10, 12 grand a month for care, it goes out the door pretty fast. And so I want to maintain an earning for as long as I possibly can without dipping into any of the retirement funds. And that's kind of one of my goals, is to be in that place so that there is enough if there is a point in time where there isn't, where I'm not able to work and have more income coming and just have like a fixed income.
Yeah. That security is important. What about advice for a young lady who is starting on the path that you are already so successful at? If you could talk to her and tell her, what's one thing you would say to her to help her be successful like you?
I think it's a question as opposed to an advice thing. Try a lot of things. Be curious. I believe I got where I got because I asked questions. And then when you do something that you don't like, just stop it. Don't keep doing it. Like, I was a maid in a hotel for one day. I came home and said, Mom, I'm never doing that again. Like, I may not ever do it even for myself. That was disgusting. So, so figure out, but try a lot of things. And don't be afraid to get your hands dirty. Don't be afraid to work and do stuff you like. If you love music, do things around music. If you love children, do things around children. If you love gardening, do things around gardening. If you like accounting, do that. If you love AI and you want to create something online, do it that way. But really, kind of let yourself be creative and be open to the different kinds of experiences. And definitely go have some fun and don't drink too much alcohol.
I love it.
Don't do drugs. I didn't do drugs, but my drug of choice was alcohol, but I'm going to include those in there too.
I love it. That's great. Michele, that is a perfect way to end this. Thank you so much for sharing your story and sharing your path. If I have a young lady who wants to get in touch with you or ask questions, where does she find you?
The best place to go is on our website, and there's a video there that you can watch. At the end of the video, you can book a call with me for one-on-one. So it's on my homepage at acellc.consulting. And that's the best way to reach me.
Well, Michele, thank you so much for doing this for us and for sharing your story. I appreciate it.
Well, thank you for taking me on this journey, because we talked about a number of things I usually don't mention. So I had a lot of fun. Thank you.